We are nearing the end of the year, and January 2025 is coming up, and you know what that means: a whole bunch of brand new games to sink your teeth into. Hi, guys, it's Shaun, and today on Ruthless MC, the top 10 new games of January 2025, starting off with number 10. It's Hyper Light Breaker 1. I've been looking forward to since I found out it existed. Hyper Light Breaker is set decades before Hyper Light Drifter: The Heart Machine. I mean, to be frank, smash indie hit. This is obviously different. It is a 3D game. It is a prequel. It's co-op, and you know, other people can play together as mercenaries fighting the Abyss King, which I don't know anything about yet. Sounds bad. Also, we know that the world of Hyperlight Drifter is pretty post-apocalyptic and not happy. So I don't know how good this one's gonna turn out in the end, but I think the game itself is probably going to turn out great now. If you played Solar Ash, which is their previous game and also a game that takes place in the same universe, although it's less related to Hyperlight Drifter than Breaker, is they have built on the systems that they built for that game, which was something I was happy to hear because I think Solar Ash is actually a pretty underrated game. I think the fact that they didn't put Hyperlight in the name made it a little tougher to sell, even though it takes place in the same universe, but also maybe they just weren't ready to actually touch Hyperlight blank. This game's a roguelike, takes place in a randomly generated world called the Overgrowth, and generally looks like a pretty worthy follow up to the series so far. Hyper Light Breakers coming January 14th. It is currently launching only on PC and an early access on Steam. At number 9 is Star Wars Hunters, a free to play squad based arena combat game. This game actually came to Switch, iOS, and Android back in June, but it's proven to be popular enough that they actually want to launch it on PC and are doing so with an upgrade to the graphics, which is obviously good, not a major one, but better textures is usually a good thing. Basically, it's 4v4 battle stuff in like Star Wars places like Tatooine, Hoth, etc. It actually takes place after the fall of the Galactic Empire, so you're not going to be playing any of the iconic battles from the prequel or original trilogies. Don't know about the sequel trilogy, but I would guess the idea is just to kind of make it a little murky. You're not really supposed to think about the story here. I don't know. It looks pretty cool. I actually missed the first Steam play test that they're doing. That was the 13th to the 16th, but they are doing another play test before formally launching January 10th to 13th. You can sign up on the Steam page. It looks fun. I might download it on Switch and give it a whirl. But I also don't know if that's representative of exactly what we're going to get on Steam. These are apparently going to be cross-play, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the same thing. Obviously, keyboard mouse is very different than some Joy-Cons. But yeah, Star Wars Hunters is launching in early access on PC on January 27th. At number 8 is Orcs Must Die: Deathtrap. If you're not familiar with the acclaimed action tower defense series by Robot Entertainment, well, you got two things that make it at least notable: the traditional tower defense stuff like placing traps, and the fact that you've got third person action combat. This new one's introducing a 4 player co op and roguelite progression. So I don't know, the series has always pulled from a couple of different things, but it sounds like they like the idea of continuing to add more ideas. And I know roguelite has become kind of a big old trend, but if I'm honest, is a trend that I like. I like the elements that a lot of different genres have been cribbing from roguelikes and roguelites. I think that the structure of those games, I like that kind of a little bit better because I can just pick up and play it whenever, and I think that that's a good idea to incorporate here into this sort of action tower defense game, which is already frankly pretty unique. Orcs Must Die: Deathtrap is going to launch on January 28th on PC and Xbox Series. And number 7 is Arken Age, a VR action adventure, comes to us by Vitruvius VR, which I'm not sure if I'm saying completely correct. But anyway, Arken Age is set in the Biochasm. It's a different looking game. Honestly, it kind of looks like if you combine Skyrim with Horizon Zero Dawn, at least in terms of aesthetic. I mean, probably closer to Skyrim in terms of quality. It's definitely not quite on the level of Horizon in terms of fidelity, looks a bit simpler, but also looks like an interesting game. The thing it's touting is physics based combat, which is something, touted in a lot of VR games at this point. I'm not going to say that's like something that sets it apart, but it does look like good physics based combat on top of that. They're very quick to emphasize this is an exploration game with crafting and all that kind of stuff. The thing is, it's not just like a survival game or something like that. It's a 15-hour campaign, and I like that. There's also an endless combat mode, which, I mean, if the combat is as good as it looks, probably good replay value. Arken Age is coming to PlayStation 2 VR and Steam VR January 16th. And number six is Dynasty Warriors Origins. I always have a soft spot for a Dynasty Warriors game, and it's been quite a while since we've actually had a real one that I can recall. It's an actual Dynasty Warriors game. Probably the most recent good ones were the Hyrule Warriors games, and those are obviously not Dynasty Warriors, not set in the era of the Three Kingdoms or anything like that. This entry to the hack and slash legendary franchise has you as a nameless hero who's got amnesia. Not exactly like the most original thing, but who cares? It's Dynasty Warriors, and it's not just Dynasty Warriors, it's Dynasty Warriors on current hardware. And they're saying that they can display up to 10,000 soldiers on screen, which is absolutely nuts, and I think is enough of a reason to want a new Dynasty Warriors. Besides the fact that, I'm a huge fan of the series and want more, I am glad they're bringing it back from the dead after that. After that, Dynasty Warriors 9, you want to go back to the before you buy I did on that one. It's a not kind. This looks like something I would be kind to, though. It seems to avoid the pitfalls that they fell for pretty hard in that game, so I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna land January 17th on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. At number 5 is Aloft Co-op Sandbox, survival game built in a world of floating islands. Now, you would be very, very dumb if you didn't immediately make a Tears of the Kingdom comparison, but it looks like a pretty different game aside from aesthetic. But I will also add it has a little bit of, I don't know, kind of a Chrono Trigger look to it, as well as the Skies of Arcadia thing to it. Like, you essentially convert your island into a ship and sail it around. And number 4 is Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, a remastered masterpiece that just, I mean, this is always should have been a high priority to get onto the Switch. Frankly, Switch to better be backwards compatible, because there's no excuse for them waiting this long to put out Donkey Kong Country Returns in HD. This is a Wii game. It is an absolute classic. It is every bit as good as the old school Donkey Kong Country games, and there's a good reason why they made a sequel to it in Tropical Freeze. However, now we're playing this game, which is every bit a return to everything that you like about Donkey Kong Country on a regular ass console. Like, well, I guess the Nintendo Switch has its own little quirks in terms of what it actually is, but you can play a regular game on a Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Wii was not quite that, and in every way this is like a traditional 2D platformer on a system that was made to just like do motion control crap. This is why there's no excuse for it taking this long. It's, like I said, a traditional ass platformer with some of the best level design in the entire Donkey Kong Country series, which, by the way, stands well above many platforming series. Donkey Kong Country is just a phenomenal game, and its sequels were as well, and you bet your ass I'm gonna be playing the hell out of this when it launches January 16th on Switch. And number 3 is Eternal Strands, a new action adventure game coming to us by Yellow Brick Games. I'm sure, no doubt, a reference to the Wizard of Oz, but it's founded by Mike Laidlaw, who you may know from Dragon Age. It's a third-person action adventure game very oriented towards vertical exploration, which I like. Obviously, the footage you're looking at shows terrain and places that encourage vertical exploration. And you got the whole Colossus type enemy from time to time, but the more you look, the more you notice that the environmental stuff is very interactive. You can do a lot to change everything going on around you using your elemental abilities, and to me that makes this stand out. Eternal Strands is a game that by all accounts looks like something from like the near era, not necessarily graphically speaking, but like it reminds me of that. And I don't mean near automata, I mean near looks a lot better, of course, but I know it's got that feeling to it. Even it, like, the vibe is even different, but it's got the vertical exploration and the environmental interactivity. I think that puts it a cut above, and I'm pretty nostalgic for that era of games. So, giving us some new stuff in something like that, I'm pretty interested. Eternal Strands is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC January 28th. And number two is Sniper Elite Resistance, the latest installment in the World War II shooter series. This one plops you down in occupied France, and your mission is to thwart a Wunderwaffe Nazi project. I'm not going to make it a joke that makes that into the Oasis song. I'm not doing it. I'm mentioning, but I'm not doing it. I'm doing everything I can not to do it. So, it's a standalone narrative that runs parallel to the events of Sniper Elite 5. Of course, you got your tactical third person combat, your sniping elements, your stealth, all that stuff is here. But they've added propaganda missions in which you're supposed to disrupt enemy communications and spread disinformation to weaken Nazi control, which no doubt is going to make people think a lot. I think Sniper Elite Resistance is coming January 30th to the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and Steam, as well as Game Pass. And finally, at number one, it's Assetto Corsa at EVO, the sequel to the racing simulator that you may or may not have heard of. It is a series that it trends towards the more realistic stuff, and they're continuing that track with a big open world that they've added. The previous games have not been open world. This one has a 600 square mile open world. Actually, I don't completely know if that represents the open world itself or the amount of square miles of roads, because that language has been used, and I don't know if that's how they're distinguishing it or not. Like I said, it is a realistic trending game. You've got advanced physics, you've got dynamic weather, you've got 24-hour day night cycles, a lot of different vehicles. It's a cool looking game, but it's also got drift challenges and stuff like that. Not necessarily arcadey ones, more realistic ones, but still very cool. It's launching in early access January 16th on PC.